Hello, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, or maybe it's your least favorite horoscope. I appreciate all of the positive comments I got on my last weekly horoscope. Before we get started, I want to address two things. I think one, my Joe Biden prediction was wrong. Now, I was expecting something that actually happened to him on the 5th. However, this Monday, this is actually the second thing I want to address, is the second pass of Pluto returning to America. Wow, I cannot speak today. It's the second Pluto return of America. The first time we had the Pluto return was when Mars conjoined Pluto, and that was the day that we gave sanctions to Russia. So we weaponized our economy, we weaponized the dollar, we kicked them off the banking system to where they can't make their bond payments. Anyway, we're going to see a repeat of that this week, and I just wanted to make an announcement. But I still think something might happen to Joe Biden, and we'll figure out if it happens a little bit later. I think something about the 5th and the 6th will come up with that. Like, for example, when Donald Trump got impeached, one of the days, I think Patrick Watson, he's a great astrologer. You guys should check him out. He did a whole article on Trump being impeached. And it started with when he made that phone call to Zelensky. It started with this, I believe, this peak period that would have eventually turned into a loosening of the bonds in his zodiacal releasing. However, on that day, like nothing had happened that people had known about. However, it came up later that on that day he made a phone call with President Zelensky, and then it shows up in the astrology. What I'm trying to say is, not everything is immediately obvious, and something could still happen that we figure out, started on that day. So I will say that I'll take the L, but because I did also want to, say, like, I think as astrologers, people get really scared to make predictions, but I kind of feel like this is the business of making predictions. So I'd rather make predictions and be wrong and figure out what happens after that. So I'd rather just be, honest with you guys. That was a prediction I made. Nothing happened, but I still have a little bit of money on the table with it, and we'll end up seeing. So anyway, we have quite a bit of week ahead of us this week. Wrong button. This week? Yes. So I almost said this button. I swear to God, I feel like Mercury is retrograde right now. Like something happened where all of the Mercury things are not working the way they're supposed to. But anyway, we have quite a bit of week ahead of us. Nothing like insanely crazy. But this is quite a bit of highlights. I mean, Venus is going to trine Saturn. I like that. It's very social. It's like getting along with, your group. Full moon in Capricorn. It's time to get serious. As you could tell from my thumbnail of this video, shit's getting real. Mercury sextiles Uranus this week. I like that. Venus squares Neptune. I'm sure you guys could already hear what I'm saying in my head about that. Mercury Cazimi, there's a lot of clarity. That Mercury Cazimi is actually like almost opposite Pluto too. And then Venus enters Cancer by Sunday night. So quite a bit of Venus action this week. But let's go ahead and just jump into it and start talking about it. So on Monday, the real only thing that we have going on is the moon in Sagittarius still, which again, as we ended last week, the moon would be in Sagittarius, making that trine to Jupiter, where there was all of this hope and inspiration. Then as we get into Monday, the moon is actually going to go opposite Venus. And then after it goes opposite Venus, it'll make a sextile to Saturn. So what does this look like? The big thing is this is moon and Sag, right? Optimism, fun, adventure, but it's opposite Venus in Gemini. This is like when you go to... I don't want to say when you go to Disneyland with your friends. If you go to Disneyland with your friends, you need to get a better hobby. But, I think of like an amusement park of like, you get there and these people want to do this and you want to do that. And it's kind of like there's all of these fun things to do and it can almost be overwhelming of where to go. Maybe if you've been to a casino, if you've been to a casino, most of you Americans, most of you have been to a casino. The big thing is like the moon and Sag opposite Venus and Gemini is like, okay, when all of the lights and noises and the smoke in the air is very like distracting, it can make you kind of like not realize what you're looking at. Like it kind of makes you tune out because there's just so much overwhelming ambient noise. So I feel like on Monday, there might be this kind of like overstimulation. You drank too much coffee. You had a couple too many cigarettes. You stayed up a little bit too late. You're a little bit amped up and it's a little all over the place. Not horrible, not bad, but I feel like it can be rather distracting. Now, what I do like about this, though, is that like moon, this is how we're feeling. This is what our needs are. It's in Sagittarius. There's this like philosophical depth to how we feel. And it's opposite Venus and Gemini. I really think this is like, are we stimulated? Like, if you're not getting stimulation from the things that you're seeking stimulation from, like there might be a problem. Maybe you're getting too much of it, or maybe that's the wrong thing. And so I really think that this is kind of like a day of kind of like, check where you can get fun and stimulation and make sure it's like, I guess like what would work for you. And the reason I say that is eventually this week, Venus is going to square Neptune, where that is a lot of overstimulation. And that is it's kind of like when there's like too much noise going on and it's just overwhelming and you can't think and you freak out. That's what Venus Neptune is going to be like. So I feel like the moon and Sag is like, maybe you go like the moon and Sag opposite Venus is like you go to the party, you're at the party and things are fun at first. But then later on when Venus squares Neptune, it's like, okay, everyone's fucked up and the music's too loud and I want to go home. So I think on Monday, there's this kind of exciting feeling to what's going on. It's very stimulating. There's people there. But I think that vibe will change as we go out through the week. But Monday looks pretty exciting. After the moon leaves this opposition with Venus, it's just going to be sextiling Saturn. So again, moon in Sagittarius, sextiling Saturn, as I think a lot about like Sagittarius and Capricorn stuff is like deep philosophical, like stoic thinking. And so I think with like the moon and Sag leaving that opposition to Venus, and that's also like an opposition again, like they're almost combating. So again, that's why I brought the analogy up of like, you go to an amusement park and certain people want to do this, but certain people want to go there. And there's kind of like this, there's only so many hours in the day and we have to figure out a plan of where to go first. What do we prioritize? And so I think as the moon then sextiles Saturn, there is this sense of like figuring out what the right priorities are, figuring out a system, figuring out a plan on how to go about everything. It's kind of like when you get to a party with if you're really smart and you go with your friends, you're like, all right, we're going to this party at this time. And then around this time is when we're going to leave. You kind of have an escape plan already set up. So Monday honestly looks really nice. I always like to bring about too, when you have like fire and air stuff, it's just a lot of ideas and passions are circulating. So it's not very stagnant, which I feel like with Mars and Taurus, we're going to want to try to not be I don't want to say try not to be stagnant, but the stagnation is there. It's very easy to lean into being stagnant, and some people don't want that. Anyway, that's Monday. Let's go ahead and go into Tuesday. Tuesday, the moon is going to enter Capricorn. It's going to make a trine to Mars, and it's going to square Jupiter. I kind of like that, kind of don't. And then Venus is going to trine Saturn. I do like that. Let's talk about it. Okay, moon goes into Capricorn, trine Mars in Taurus. Slow and steady wins the race. I think this is very, like, moon in Capricorn is like, you know what the plan is. You make a plan, you stick to the plan. And as it trines Mars in Taurus, like, just slow grinding, just, getting in that fixed position. Mars is in Taurus, keeping that momentum there. It's kind of like, this is kind of a funny analogy. It's kind of like if you've done like a long road trip and then like there's a moment where you're like, you're in the middle of the road trip, you eat, you go to the bathroom, and then you get in the car and then you're like, all right, we're in the car for the next few hours. We're not making any more stops. That's what this feels like, in my opinion. As the moon goes into Capricorn too, and it's trining Mars and Taurus, we are building up for the full moon in Capricorn. That is one of the biggest highlights this week. And as the moon goes into Capricorn, right, it's still like it's increasing in light. There's a lot of like things becoming aware, but this is the moon. We're talking about feelings. We're talking about the body, and it's in detriment in Capricorn. The big thing and I'm going to spoiler alert, what this full moon in Capricorn is about not receiving your needs. Okay. But I feel like as the moon goes into Capricorn and it trines this Mars and Taurus, there is this sense of like having to get uncomfortable to do things that are shitty. Like this full moon in Capricorn is kind of like, you guys know what I talk about with the moon in Capricorn. You got to leave your emotions at the door. You kind of have to check out, in order to get things done. Sometimes when you are, if you're making a business deal, or if you are, having serious conversations that, if your emotions are involved, can skew your opinion or skew your decision making skills. The moon in Capricorn is times to like, take the emotion out of it if it's something that you need to do that's serious, because you don't want to get your emotions, invested into something where it could skew you left or skew you right. But as the moon goes into Capricorn and it starts to trine Mars and Taurus, there is this sense of like, all right, this is what I have to do. I have to kind of suck it up. And it's trining Mars and Taurus. You don't need to like go about it as big as possible. You just need to get something done. I think the biggest thing though is what was it? I think the moon. Yeah, so the moon makes a trine to Mars, but it squares Jupiter. So there is this thing of like on Tuesday, if you're just expecting to be like moon in Capricorn, I'm just going to get it done. The moon's trining Mars. Just get what you can done. You don't need to do everything. You just need to be able to do what you can. Because the moon squaring Jupiter is realizing like you're only one person. You can't do it all. And I think a lot of this, the moon trining Mars is being consistent, getting your stuff done. But then as the moon makes this square to Jupiter, I think there's this like resistance to continuing. And I really feel like this is where the full moon kind of comes into play, where the full moon in Capricorn is like, hey, where are you not receiving your needs? Where do you kind of have to suck it up and get serious about some stuff? And I think as that moon squares Jupiter, there's this realization of like, you can only go so far, right? I think what's really interesting about Jupiter and Aries right now is, I will also say this, I don't want to say I got Jupiter and Aries wrong per se, but I was much more optimistic about Jupiter, and I'm guilty of that as an astrologer. I'm like, Jupiter, woo! But something that I've learned doing consultations and seeing what Jupiter and Aries has been like for people is Jupiter is knowledge and wisdom, and in order for you to get that knowledge and wisdom, typically there's some like hardship that you have to go through. And the biggest thing is that what I think I'm putting together is this is still a Jupiter and Pisces transit, meaning Jupiter transits one sign per year, usually. This is still Jupiter and Pisces time, and Jupiter is simply dipping into Aries, and it will fully go through Aries in 2023. So this is just giving us a sneak preview of what next year has to offer. But this is kind of giving us hey, this is, for example, this is English 101, English 102, or I didn't go to college, so I don't know what the next number is. But let's say English 102, Jupiter and Aries is like, hey, this is what your next lesson is. So this is why you need to pay attention to what's going on right now, because this is what's coming up next. So I look at like this moon in Capricorn squaring Jupiter and Aries, there might be this realization of kind of like, hey, again, moon trining Mars, do what you can, but if you're still on this Jupiter and Aries stuff of like just going full max, full throttle, I don't think that's going to work. I mean, Mars, which is Jupiter's ruler, is in detriment. It's in Taurus. Like, you can still be Jupiter and Aries in the sense of like taking on more than maybe you usually would, taking on a challenge, but it's Mars and Taurus. Like, just do what you can. Like, you don't need to throw on, like, if let's say you're working out and you're trying to hit your max bench and you've never done a max bench before. You don't need to throw every single plate on there just to do one rep. Like, do what you can and maybe push it a little bit, but you just need to be consistent. Something I really love about Mars and Taurus is like the energy, is the consistency of just the, things being the same, keeping the momentum there. And so you don't want to mess up that momentum, I think is a good way to look at it. And I think as the moon goes into Capricorn and trines Mars, it's just like, hey, you just got to do what you can, even if it feels like it's not enough. And that's okay. But I also feel like it'll be really easy to be hard on yourself on that. So let's go to Wednesday. Wednesday's the big day, to be honest with you guys. I mean, full moon in Capricorn, Mercury sextiles Uranus, Venus squares Neptune. Quite a bit going on. First things first, let's talk about the full moon in Capricorn. Number one, we have the second Pluto return of America. In my opinion, they might roll back sanctions, but I kind of doubt it. And I don't know if you're keeping up with geopolitics, but the sanctions have done more damage for us Americans than it has for the Russians or the Russian government. They're really not working. It's a little played out anyway. But this full moon in Capricorn, I think it's really weird, I guess, being an astrologer and doing like horoscopes that are very like personal. Cause I try to make these like, all right, what are you doing in your day-to-day life? But with this being the Pluto return of this country, and, gas prices are up. They're saying gas prices are going to go down. That's temporary. Gas prices will eventually go back up. Trust me on that one. They might go down for a minute, but not forever. Food prices are still going to go up. And I just feel like this is going to be a big, like, I think on like a nation level, this will feel very like, wow, we don't actually have what we fucking need. The list is so long of the needs that this country has that no one in power is doing anything for us. So I really feel like on Wednesday, there's going to be this weird feeling in this country of just like, wow, our shit is not together. I think that's an inspirational time to do something about it and, be the change that you want to see. However, I look at this full moon in Capricorn. Let's talk about it on a personal level. We have the sun in Cancer, Mercury's in Cancer, and it's combust. So there's this sense of like being aware that you need to focus on your needs, but having that clarity of what it is that you need might be hard. But this full moon in Capricorn is like, it's easier to figure out who you are by figuring out what you're not. And because, I think you can be a lot of different things, but it's easier to, it's easier to define who you are by realizing what you're not. And I look at this full moon in Capricorn as kind of realizing what's not there. What are you going without? And there is this part of it that's full moon in Capricorn, like it's time to get really serious. Like, hey, are your needs being met? It's kind of like one of those things of like, for example, like, online humor loves to joke about depression. They love to say we need to take mental health seriously, but they use their depression and, self-deprecating jokes every single day. It's so like hypocritical. And there's this like joke that's kind of like, oh, like I haven't taken a shower in 3 days because I'm so depressed. And again, I get it. I've totally been there. But I look at this like full moon in Capricorn is like, okay, sure, you're depressed, but you need to take a fucking shower. Like, please clean yourself. Sure, it's going to bring up emotions, but like, can you take care of yourself? Come on. And, this is a full moon in Capricorn. Like, this is the moon in detriment. This is our feelings, our body. And the next full moon is on Saturn. So it doesn't like get lighter as far as these lunations go after this, but this is really like, hey, check in. What's up? Be real. Are you okay? And sure, you might be too depressed to take a shower, but guess what? You need to take a fucking shower, stinky. It's gross. And it also helps you out. It's going to make you feel better. Even though I know for whatever reason with depression, you just want to soak in it. And again, I don't know why that is, but what I'm saying is you're going to have to get over it. And you're going to have to do the thing that's going to be good for you. Take care of yourself. It might be hard, but I think in order to do that, you have to take it seriously. Like full moon in Capricorn is like, are you taking it seriously enough? Is this serious enough for you? And I think the other part that goes along with that is on Wednesday, Mercury is going to sextile Uranus. I really like that for kind of like breakthrough opportunity when it comes to realizing what your needs are and getting them in a way that maybe is innovative, that maybe is liberating, that is maybe unorthodox. Like Mercury's in Cancer again, we're aware that we need to focus on our needs, but because it's combust, it's so close to the sun, getting that light bulb moment isn't there. That's coming this week though. That's coming on Saturday when the Mercury Cazimi happens. So just wait. You're not going to have the light bulb moment on Wednesday, but you will later. But I think as Mercury sextiles Uranus, don't be afraid to try something new. And like full moon in Capricorn, Mercury sextile Uranus, you're going to have to do something serious. You're going to have to take care of some needs. And don't be afraid to try something new. Like, I mean, I feel like I say this almost every week now, but I feel like with Mercury in Cancer, it's much more of like, it's Mercury, right? We're talking about communication. We're talking about ideas. We're talking about like logistics and planning. And as it sextiles Uranus and Taurus, I mean, Cancer and Taurus is so like food and nutrition and like feel good and sensations. And it's like, can you make yourself feel, well, for example, it's like maybe replacing your sugar with like stevia. And I'm not really recommending either or, but it's that idea of like, can you get your fix in without the thing that is going to like, that you want to change? I think it's a good way to look at it. I think the other thing though is on Wednesday, we have Venus squaring Neptune. Did I even talk about last week? Did I talk about Venus trining Saturn? I didn't talk about Venus trining Saturn. Wow. Well, let me talk about it for Wednesday real quick. So just for the heads up, Venus trining Saturn. This is Venus in Gemini. It's very social. It's very connected. And it's trining Saturn. This is like getting groups of people together that you want to get together. I want to make an announcement, but I'm not ready yet, but maybe this will push me into it. So I've been thinking about, and I've said this a few times, but I think I'm going to try to do it on the last Sunday of this month of doing a free meetup in the park here in Denver, like a Denver astrology meetup. It's not like lectures or nothing, but just like people who are into astrology, just hanging out under a tree, kicking back, relaxing, enjoying the sun. No, just to connect with people. So that's something that I've been saying I want to do. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it. It would be the last Sunday this month. So the Denver folk out there or the Colorado people, keep that in mind. It would probably be at like Washington Park or something like that. I'm thinking like a Sunday brunch thing before it gets too hot. It wouldn't be anything formal either. But anyway, Venus trine Saturn, connecting with people, connecting with ideas, Especially too, like Venus and Gemini, I think trining Saturn is also being like, Venus is like your desires and your pleasures, and it's like Saturn, which is like, authorities and rules. It's like, I don't know, getting your needs met in a very like structured way, or maybe not your needs, but your desires, and being pleasured in a way that is sustainable is one way to look at it, but I would also look at it as like getting your desires met in a way that works. Like Venus trine Saturn, like having fun, but like responsibly, like, or like, that's like, what are those stupid commercials? Drink responsibly, whatever that means. But Venus trine Saturn is very like, have fun responsibly. But then on Wednesday, Venus, I think Venus is at 45 minutes here. And anyway, Venus squares Neptune Wednesday night. The problem with this, though, with Venus in Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces is my Gen Zs and maybe my millennials will get this, but this is a deep fried meme. But not like a deep fried meme where, and if you don't know what a deep fried meme is like when you get a meme and then you just throw 20,000 Instagram filters all on top of each other to where it's just so saturated and ugly and distorted that it's just overwhelming. That's Venus and Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces. Or kind of like, have you ever been in a moment where it's like, well, this is overstimulation, I think is a good way to put it. Like, especially all you, I don't know what word to call it, because so many words are just used in weird ways. Like what, I don't want to say neurodivergent, because that, I have a lot of feelings about that. But I would say people that struggle with being overwhelmed by noises and lights, be aware on Wednesday. You might feel kind of overwhelmed with a lot, especially when it comes to just stimulating things. Like if you're scrolling too much on social media, having too much pleasure stuff. Like Venus trine Saturn is like, hey, make the connection. But as Venus squares Neptune, like, the moment it's a little bit too, like, for example, with Instagram filters, a lot of you love the Instagram filters and love to not know when to stop. Know when to stop. Know when enough is enough. I think that's the biggest thing with Venus square Neptune. I also think, too, with Venus square Neptune, you might think something is fun, but then as it squares like in your head, you're like, this sounds great. And then you do it and you're like, oh, this is not what I had in my head. This is not what my expectations were. So I think with Venus square Neptune, the biggest thing is just like, be aware where you can kind of like idealize or romanticize something. And then when you actually get it, you realize it's not all that that you imagined it to be. So Venus square Neptune, I think you also might be confused on what you want. Like Venus and Gemini, there's all these options. There's all this stuff to do. What do you even want? I think Venus trine Saturn is probably the way to go with that. Of just like, keep it basic, keep it simple. And I think also, too, with this full moon in Capricorn that's going on Wednesday with Venus squaring Neptune, I think you're realizing you can't just numb out the pain with like stimulants. You can't just numb out what you don't need with like, oh, sure, I have a horrible relationship with my parents and my loved ones, but if I keep partying and having fun, I can just ignore it all. I don't think it's going to work that well this week. So, I think I guess if you're looking to run away from your problems, it doesn't look that easy for you this week. There are weeks where it's easy to run away from problems. This doesn't look like an easy week for that. So anyway, let's get to Thursday. So on Thursday, that's when the moon's going to be entering Aquarius, and it will make a square to Mars and a sextile to Jupiter. This is like the reverse Uno card of Tuesday, because on Tuesday, the moon trines Mars, squares Jupiter, versus this is square Mars, sextile Jupiter. Damn, it is really hot in this fucking room. Anyway, moon goes into Aquarius. These Aquarius transits are going to get weird as we go into Leo season. It is. Like, all of these Aquarius transits is all of this authoritarian, you're either this side or that side, and the culture wars, and all of that shit is all this Aquarian stuff that's going on. And as we keep having more of these Aquarius transits come up, it's really important to understand basic astronomy. Saturn's retrograde, and the sun here in like a couple weeks is going to be making an opposition to Saturn. What this means is that the Earth is at its closest point to Saturn. Like in our orbit around the sun, we are the closest to Saturn. And you can look at Saturn in the night sky. Saturn is going to be at the top of the sky at like midnight here in a couple weeks. And what that means is Saturn is as bright as it gets throughout the year. So think of that metaphysically, right? Put on your ancient thinking cap for a moment, and you're out and about 3,000-4,000 years ago, and the planet Saturn that rules all these hardcore stuff it is bright in the night where it rules. Like, the Saturn stuff is going to get heavier and heavier, but it's going to be counterbalanced with all of this Leo stuff going on. So this, difference between individuality and, and the self and the versus like the group dynamic and all of that stuff is really going to get brought up. And so I bring this up because as the moon goes into Aquarius, there is this sense of like, all right, moon's in Capricorn. We did, what we didn't want to do. Now the moon's in Aquarius, and it's like feeling stuck or feeling like trapped on one side of a idea. Like Saturn and Aquarius is those mental walls, right? Like I think it's so interesting right now is, no matter what you think or no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, or even any of the spectrums, there's a lot of this energy going on right now that's like feeling trapped ideologically in one side where you can't even speak about the other things that are going on. And so I feel like the moon in Aquarius is feeling very like stuck on one side of that for a moment. And it's going to be squaring Mars and Taurus, where there is this kind of like resistance to changing. Like the moon in Aquarius squaring Mars and Taurus is like, no, I'm not going to change my mind. And, I think that's like the craziest part about all this Aquarius stuff is just people aren't changing their minds. They're not like actually like, being open-minded to stuff. And I'm sure a lot of you could probably even say that about me, which by the way, I've been meaning to tell you, please give me a comment for the algorithm. It super helps me out. Give me a like if you like this video. It lets me know that you actually like it. But let me know what you guys feel about this Aquarius stuff, especially with this full moon in Capricorn too. I'd love to know where you feel like this moon in Capricorn is going to show up in your life. What are your needs? What are you guys going to do? Please let me know in the comments. And if anything, if you just hate me, share your hate in the comments. It helps me out. It's a win-win. Anyway. It's going to go into Aquarius squaring Mars. And there's just the resistance to change. There really is, I would really just say resistance to change. And like the moon is also going to be sextiling Jupiter, where I feel like that can kind of be like, it's a two-way street with this stuff. Like moon sextiling Jupiter in Aries is like, yeah, I'm right. And I'm not going to change. Like moon sextiling Jupiter is like, no matter what the ego makes you right, no matter what. So I think that moon squaring Mars is like, I'm not going to change. I'm going to be resistant. And the moon sextiling Jupiter is like convincing yourself as to why you're right about that, which might be fine, might be not. Like for some of you, that might get in the way of the progress you're trying to make. But for others, maybe that's the decision that you do need to make. I don't know. That's for you guys to call. But I think as the moon goes into Aquarius and squaring Mars, it is a lot of resistance to change. And that moon, I think another way to look at it is the moon sextiles Jupiter. Give yourself an opportunity to maybe think about the situation differently. Can you change? Can you do things differently? I know this might be shocking, but yeah, you can change. Change is inevitable. So think about how maybe you can do some changes. But I don't think maybe Thursday's the best day to change. It just seems like a lot of resistance to changing. So we get into Friday. Oh, wait, did I miss anything? No, that's it. We get into Friday. I've been missing like some of the stuff that I've been talking about. But anyway, we get to Friday. The moon squares Uranus and then conjoins Saturn and trines Venus. If you were thinking about this in like let's say if you're on Twitter, this is everyone being in their camps and no one changing. We're on the right side. And then the other people on the other side are going to be like, we're on the right side. Like the moon squaring Uranus too, like the moon in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus is there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of instability right now. Moon in Aquarius is feeling like, for example, like, what's a good way? Like, for example, the Aquarius stuff is super like sanctions on Russia. We're literally like making this world literally more divided. And because there's sanctions on Russia and we're on one side of the fence, squaring Uranus, there's a fucking oil crisis. There's a fucking food crisis. And people are literally going to starve to death. People in nations that had no, dealings with this conflict at all. But this moon in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus is going to be like, hey, if this is the decision you're going to make, if this is the side that you're going to be on, if this is the way that you're going to think about things, expect the unexpected. Expect the instability. And then I think as the moon squares Uranus, there is this like, you could say that's a good time to do something different, but my problem is the moon then conjoins Saturn right after. By the way, guys, I mentioned this a couple months ago, that the Saturn-Uranus square was making some distance. They're coming back together now. Uranus is going to start stationing retrograde here soon. Actually, in a while, it'll be like Virgo season. But Saturn's coming back up to Uranus. We're getting another Saturn-Uranus square. And when that happens, that means the moon's going to hit Uranus and Saturn almost instantaneously. So as the moon makes this square to Uranus, there's a lot of things that are going to be unstable, like goods and oil. Also, by the way, I totally stand with the farmers in the Netherlands that are going against the absolute crazy climate control that the Netherlands are doing, which, by the way, I know I've upset some vegans before. I don't want to take your right away to eat what you want, but you guys legislating the right for me to eat the food that my that humans have ate for millions and millions of years is a little fascist. And climate control based, like trying to control the climate with cows is fake science. Cows don't cause any type of climate change. In fact, more so plants and agriculture, not livestock, cause more carbon emissions than cows. And I don't even want to go into that. However, I think, and I'm going to make a delineation episode about this. It's when you say, oh, we need to do X, Y, and Z for climate stuff, is how you allow fascist powers to come into play. You're talking to someone that cares about the environment, that believes in climate change. I'm not a climate alarmist or an extremist like some people are. Like, the world's not going to end in 10 years. But when you're saying that, for example, there's going to be a food shortage, and now they're saying that the Netherlands, which is a big food exporter in Europe, has to literally cut their emissions so low to where a lot of these farmers can't produce cows, that's more of a food shortage. And that's a manufactured food shortage. That's not just like, uh-oh, there's no food. That is legislation that's going to cause millions of people to starve. So I think you guys should really pay attention to that Netherlands thing. Because again, we have that Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction going on. If you're on my Patreon, you know that and you know, it's so crazy that I have to talk about geopolitics in these weekly horoscopes now. Because Russia made an announcement that they're cutting off natural gas to Europe in like a couple weeks. You think that Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction isn't going to be Europe absolutely losing its mind when there's no natural gas? And they're also trying to make food shortages. All of these farmers are also protesting. Like, really, guys, like, expect a lot of civil, like, disobedience and instability coming up. This is not like fun times. Like, today, Shinzo Abe got assassinated, which was like kind of mind blowing. Along with Boris Johnson resigning, like, shit's pretty crazy right now. So anyway, when the moon, to go back to this, the moon's going to be conjoining Saturn. And there is this sense of like, hey, you kind of just have to deal with what you have to deal with. However, the moon will then make a trine to Venus. And this is what's really important right now. When it comes to this Aquarius stuff is, for example, like, again, everyone's going to have their different opinions on this. And I'm not here to change as many people's minds as possible. But I want to talk about, like, for example, these school shooters that keep happening, or just these mass shooters. We have got to start, like, actually being invested in our community, like helping people out. Like, for example, there's this sick, wet dream that like a lot of like the super radical, like far right people have, that like when shit hits the fan, they're going to go all crazy. And it's just like in a zombie apocalypse, if everyone dies, then maybe you can be a little bit more defensive. But like, we got to be more big about like actually helping each other out. So I look at this moon conjoining Saturn as like, hey, you have the people that you have, but this moon trine Venus is like, people are still there to help you. Or at least maybe you should be the person that reaches out and helps people. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm trying to work on this, but I look at this like moon conjoining Saturn as like feeling restricted, filling in the chains. But then the moon separates from Saturn and starts to trine Venus, where it's like, hey, you don't have to suffer at like the DMV like alone. Well, like maybe in California you do. Like in Colorado, people are so nice. Like you could just chit chat with someone, shoot the shit, talk about what's going on in this world and try to connect with your neighbor. Like, I really think this would be a really positive time for that. So anyway, I just look at everything going on right now. We have to, like, we're so divided in this country, and that's exactly what they want us to, whether you're extreme left, extreme right. The corporations and the governments want us to be divided. So again, it's 50 years and we're arguing over abortion and guns when, like, right now, all of the shit that's going on right now, they're literally going to keep raising interest rates, make you lose your jobs, and then get you upset about your neighbor who, has a different opinion on something, rather than actually getting upset about the federal government completely destroying this, economy and the dollar and making it harder to eat. So I think it's really important to be aware of those things, especially as Pluto goes into Aquarius. So anyway, try to be nice. We go to Saturday. Wait, did I get everything? Yeah. So we go to Saturday, and how long are we into this? 34 minutes. I thought this said 43. I was like, whoa, we're really long. Anyway, Saturday, Mercury Cazimi, Moon enters Pisces, and it sextiles Mars. Kind of like it, to be honest with you. Not that there's a reason I wouldn't, but Mercury Cazimi, the clarity hits, the conversation happens. This is communication. This is like Mercury Cazimis are always like, oh, light bulb moment. Oh, an announcement. Oh, a message is going to be given to you. Really expect some type of message Literally, someone's going to tell you something. It's also opposite Pluto. I think too, this is when we'll start hearing about, is it the jobs report? We're going to hear something about the economy around this time. And I think you'll see a lot of like decisions about how we're handling inflation and all that stuff happen around this time. It's this Mercury Cazimi opposite Pluto. What's the problem? What's the deal with the economy? That's very Mercury Cazimi opposite Pluto in Capricorn. And I think there's a lot of, also too, when you look at that in your own personal life, there's a lot of this, like Pluto is like power and fear and control. And I think this Mercury Cazimi is kind of like realize, like, it's like, for example, if you're in like an abusive relationship or, dealing with someone who's very manipulative, because, we're social human beings, it may be hard to realize that someone's doing that to you versus Mercury Cazimi opposite Pluto is like, oh, that person's actually manipulating me and controlling me. Why have I not realized that before? And when you realize that, it's kind of hard. There's a lot of like denial and stuff like that comes into it. So I just feel like on Saturday, you're going to realize something. It may not be what you want to realize or what you want to hear, but it's obviously like, it's very like, hey, we're kind of looking at not a gift horse in the mouth, but like we're looking at what's that saying when you're looking at like the shit right in its fucking face? That's what's happened on Saturday. But the moon goes into Pisces and it sextiles Mars. Not bad. I think as the moon's in Pisces, we're kind of filling things out. We're a little bit all over the place, but it's going to be sextiling Mars and Taurus. Just make yourself feel comfortable. What's going to, again, Mars and Taurus is just keeping a rhythm. Mars and Taurus is just, being consistent as much as possible. And I feel like this moon in Pisces is like, finding a creative, fun way to keep that consistency. So Saturday looks pretty fun. I think just with the Mercury Cazimi, there's a lot of realizations, a lot of awareness, a lot of messages. I think the worst part of it is like Pluto, you're like, it's kind of like, oh, this goes a little deeper than I thought. Oh, this is a little bit more problematic than I thought. But the moon's in Pisces, sextile Mars, whatever. We'll handle it on Monday. So Saturday, expect a lot of clarity. Then we get to Sunday. And on Sunday, the moon is going to conjoin Neptune. It will then trine Mercury. Mercury will go actually opposite Pluto. And Venus will enter Cancer by late Sunday evening. Is it this button? There we go. So the moon's going to be conjoining Neptune. You know what I say? It's just like overwhelming all over the place. It's kind of like when have you ever taken like too much psychedelics and you're like, I'm tripping nuts. That's like moon conjoining Neptune of like, I'm tripping right now. So give yourself some space. But this moon trining Mercury, it's kind of like you can trip nuts and still have like a profound experience. And I feel like with the moon trining Mercury in Cancer, there is this sense of like, I said this quote before and someone told me what this quote was from. And I don't remember because I only remember it's from a Mac Miller song, but it's, in order to use your head, you have to go out of your mind. And I feel like this moon and Pisces on Neptune trining Mercury, and while Mercury's opposite Pluto is a little kind of going out of your, going out of your head, going out of your mind, kind of being a little bit more like, because I look at Mercury opposite Pluto as like really understanding how deep a problem can go. Like, for example, Mercury and Cancer opposite Pluto is like, for example, like in this country, most people know that like GMOs are bad. But then when you start getting to like glyphosate and you start getting into all the chemicals that they put into stuff, you go like, oh, this is really bad. But the Mercury and Cancer opposite Pluto is very like, hey, or maybe it's also like realizing what you need, but then realizing that, because again, it's Mercury and Cancer, it's after this Cazimi, but maybe the Mercury opposite Pluto is, well, again, have you ever been like, for example, maybe you were in a shitty relationship and you thought that was a good one, and then you date someone else that treats you super good and you go, damn, that's when I was like, this is what it's supposed to be like, versus you compare it to your past and you're like, that was so fucked up now that I've realized how it's supposed to be. So I think there's this realization of like, oh, it goes a little bit deeper than you might have anticipated. All of us have like, for example, like all of us have some type of quote unquote trauma that we may not even realize has affected us deeply. And this might be a moment where you kind of realize, oh, this actually affects me a little bit deeper than I was anticipating. And I think as the moon trines Mercury, there's this kind of like just emotional, like sympathy, empathy feeling of just kind of like holding that space for it, really understanding it. And then Venus enters Cancer. I mean, like, thank God. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Venus in Gemini, but I love Venus in Cancer. Like, it's so nostalgic and so like, just like Venus is pleasure, and it's about sensations in the body, and it's in the sign of the moon, where it's like, what is actually going to make you feel good? Like, for example, like Venus in Leo is like getting glamorous attention on you feels good, versus Venus in Cancer is like, getting like a soft kiss on the forehead and a hug feels really good too. So Venus in Cancer is like, you're like, a lot of sensitive stuff's going to come up, and I think that's fine. I think just with Venus going into Cancer, there's a lot of this, like, the desire to feel like, again, nourished, the sensation and pleasuring yourself with, like body sensations and feeling, just like what is going to protect, or what's going to make your gut feel good, what's going to make your soul feel good. Like, it's like a apple pie, like on a summer day, like Venus in Cancer. So, as we get into Sunday, the vibe really shifts by this week. I mean, full moon in Capricorn, we realize what our needs are. We kind of figure out how to get that. And then there's this kind of realization a few days later of just kind of like, damn, it's kind of deep. Like, damn, it's kind of hard. So weird week, right? I guess that brings me to next week. Oh, that's, fuck. What is the next week button? There it is. I still can't believe I never know how to do these buttons. Mercury enters Leo next week. I'm telling you, this Leo stuff, guys, when you're going to start seeing a pushback to all of this stuff. Like they're still doing fucking vaccine mandates in a lot of places, and they're still doing, like, you're going to see the fire energy really ramp up again. Mars is going to conjoin Uranus and square Saturn during Leo season. This is a lot of combative. So I guess Mercury enters Leo, Mercury trines Jupiter. That's also just going to gas it up, and then Venus squares Jupiter. And what my final thoughts are with this is, like, this is the time to kind of like get your needs met now, because there is a fight ahead of you. When we go into Leo season and Mars conjoins Uranus and Rahu and it squares Saturn, you are going to be challenged. But it's going to be harder to face those challenges if you don't gas up right now. Like, if you don't, like, you are going to run out of gas in the desert if you don't get fuel here. This is your last stop for fuel. So that full moon in Capricorn, hey, you might be running on E and you need to fill up your gas tank, because there's a mission coming up. Like, Leo season's going to be pretty intense. The rest of this year is really intense. It does not get, the only time that gets better from here is like the beginning of October looks pretty nice. But the rest of the stuff, and not that it's necessarily bad, I don't like saying bad, but it is challenging. It's not going to be very easy. So, and really, I would feel like when Mars enters Gemini, things might lighten up. And then also at the beginning of October, when it's like Venus in Libra, Sun in Libra, and Mars is trining it with Saturn, that will be pretty nice. That will be actually pretty good. But for right now, it just seems like as we go into this Leo season, we start dealing with this this pride and this ego and these emotions, and it's opposite Saturn and it's squaring Mars. It's just like, this is really the time to kind of like check in, get those needs met, even if you don't want to admit them, because you've got more challenges on the way. Now, when we get to those challenges and we get into Leo season, you're going to be on some shit. You're going to be gassed up. You're going to be ready to go, ready to fight. And you may not feel that way right now, but you will later on. And so it's just one of those things of like, just take care of yourself this week. Full moon in Capricorn, just check in, I think, is probably the message to walk away with this week. So with that being said, that's what I got for you guys. Please like this video. It super helps me out. Comment on this video. Let me know what your thoughts are about this. I actually read the comments. I just don't interact with them that much, because it's very like, there's so many, I get like emails and texts and comments and DMs, and it's so overwhelming that I can't, if I interact with it, then I have to feel like I have to interact with all of it. Then I feel overwhelmed. And I'm still trying to navigate social media stuff, guys. It's not easy. So anyway, I appreciate you guys though commenting. I do read them. And I love you guys. I really do. I really hope the best for you. And I guess I will be seeing you next week.